Thanks very much. Try the veal. I'm here all night. Anyway, welcome to the AI track. Let me just put this down. Things are on the screen. Good. And anyways, my name's Joey Davila, and I'm here to present You're Not Too Late to the AI Party. Now, this talk can get, and we've got a fair bit of freedom because I have 100 slides to play with, and I can skip over things or I can jump into things. But basically, the idea here is I want to make sure, and I want to reassure you that it is not too late for you to get into artificial intelligence. How many of you here are software developers, like build applications? So we've got some of you here, at least one. How many of you here are familiar with Python? Oh, hey, okay, there we go. That's also good. How many of you here are in DevOps? Just trying to, okay. So I'm trying to tune this talk for the audience as well. I do know that a lot of the DevOps people are probably at the Kubernetes, the other Kubernetes tracks. I actually know precious little about Kubernetes. I was just joking with my friend Fred. The only thing I know about Kubernetes is that the H in Kubernetes stands for happiness. Think about that. So anyways, yes, the slides for this are available. I do have a shortcut link on my personal tech site. It is globalnerdy.com. And if you go to globalnerdy.com/AI-party, you can get the slides for this presentation. And I want you to actually, if you only remember 4 things from this talk, I'd like you to please remember these 4. These will serve you incredibly well. And remember, this is going to be part technical, part career talk. But the other thing is, I'm hoping that you're at least going to be entertained, if not informed. The first thing that you should know about this talk is a reference to this tweet where L.D. Anderson was talking to a coworker, basically when the subject of basically generalized artificial intelligence came up. He's saying, look, you know what? These models require massive infrastructure, enormous amounts of power, and pretty much the internet's worth of training data. Meanwhile, the human brain learns from the world around it and runs on sandwiches. So this, you have to remember that, yeah, despite the fact that we are doing amazing things with AI, we do require a ridiculous amount of power, a ridiculous amount of hardware, and a ridiculous amount of programming. Meanwhile, the 3 pounds of meat in our head still, right now, do a better job. The next thing is this. What we are currently calling intelligence, or at least machine intelligence, is largely pattern recognition, and it has been that way since the very beginning of the topic that we call AI. Thirdly, and we're going to talk about this in a bit, AI needs ethical people badly. The current crop are a bit of a mess ethics-wise. I would not want to pay their karma bill later on. And then finally, there is the matter of, is it too late to start? This is a graphic by Michel Real. And basically, unless you are on your deathbed, it is never too late to start. So if you're feeling FOMO about getting into AI, if you think you missed the bus, these are the early days. Please remember that the mathematical definition of what is computable is not even 100 years old yet. That won't happen until the 2030s. So we are in the Stone Age right now. So it's all right. You still have time to get started. And yeah, really quick introduction. I'm Joey Davila. I am a recently laid off developer advocate from Okta, but I do other things as well. I have the accordion, and that is my backup plan to be a musician for when this computers fad blows over. I hear you can make good money as a musician. Well, I'm going to try and be the Taylor Swift of accordion. That's my plan. I have written a book called co-written a book called The iOS Apprentice. So I specialize in mobile development. Truth be told, I am an AI dabbler. There's a person here in the audience who actually helps make real AI applications that do real things for real businesses. That's James Gress in the back. He will have a talk here tomorrow. Definitely catch it. I'm a former developer advocate at Shopify, Microsoft, and Tucows. And yes, Tucows, the shareware company, did have a developer advocate. And I learned Python at Burning Man. because Burning Man 99, immediately after that, I had a brand new job, and my boss wanted me to hit Python with hit the ground running with Python that week. So I just learned Python during the mornings when there was no partying at Burning Man, and partied at night. And any programming language you can learn in a distracting environment like Burning Man has to be a good one. And then finally, yes, I'm the second most featured accordion player on MTV Canada after Weird Al. These things happen. I also used to be a Windows Phone champ. I tried really hard to make Windows Phone happen. It was the second hardest job in mobile developer advocacy. The first one was BlackBerry. That SDK was really hard to make work. And of course, I'm from Tampa. Actually, I'm a Canadian now living in Tampa. I'm originally from Toronto. And I run the Tampa Artificial Intelligence Meetup. And this is where I dug up a lot of this material. What you're probably worried about right now is, are you a Centaur or are you a Minotaur? And let me explain what these things are. So, who here played Dungeons & Dragons? Good, good. There should be more, actually. But you know, if you play Dungeons & Dragons or you study the Greek myths, you know what the Centaurs were. So Centaur, human head and torso, rest of horse body. Anyways, Russian chess champion Garry Kasparov invented the term Centaur chess, which was basically playing chess with computer assistance, but the human still was in charge. The computer provided suggestions for next moves, but it would be that the human would make the final decision based on the computer suggestions, or might simply say, you know what, computer, you're wrong, I'm the final arbiter, I'm going to use this move. So that is Centaur chess, and we are now using it as a term in the field of AI. There is the reverse of the Centaur, and it is not reverse Centaur, this is just plain disturbing, but the reverse of the Centaur is the Minotaur, which has a bull's head and torso, and then the bottom of the body was human. Also from Greek myths, the Minotaur was a creature that lived at the center of King Minos's labyrinth. And the way we use that terminology in AI is that it depends on who's in charge. The Centaur is a creature with a human head and a non-human body, or in other words, the human is basically being assisted by the AI. The human is giving the AI instructions, getting some suggestions, but the human is still the final arbiter in the process. On the other hand, there is the Minotaur, where basically the human is taking orders from the AI. That's a bit worrisome. And it's beginning to happen all the time, especially in war fighting. Basically, a lot of military planners are going, you know what, in the end, it's probably better if we have troops coordinated by AIs, which is a bit worrying. I kind of feel bad. I feel kind of bad for our service people, because we know what happened. Did anybody see this classic Star Trek episode when they let the Enterprise get run by the M5 computer, and then in war games, it started actually killing all the other ships? That's the thing. So generally, my approach is I would like to be a Centaur when possible and a Minotaur only when necessary. And I think you would too. And if you are in the same boat as I am, this talk is for you. And what I'm going to present today is 4 reasons why it's not too late to join the AI party. And the first reason is that AI has been simmering for a long time. In fact, it has been around since pretty much the beginning of electronic computers. In fact, the first description of an electronic computer, if you asked anybody in the 1950s and 60s, was that it was an electronic brain. And it was all about trying to mimic human thinking and reasoning capability. So in 1960, we had a guy named John McCarthy. For 3 years, he was working on one of the first programming languages, Lisp. Some of you may have heard of it. It still is an important programming language, and for the longest time, if you wanted to get into AI, you had to learn Lisp. And Lisp gave rise to the smug Lisp weenie. Lisp is an incredibly flexible and powerful programming language for the few keywords it has, to the point where Lisp programmers look down on just about every other programmer except maybe Scheme, which is a form of Lisp, and Clojure, which is basically Lisp for Lisp that runs on the JVM. Possibly Haskell. There is some respect for functional languages, but for the most part, smug Lisp weenies tended to look down on everybody. And they believed in the 1960s that Lisp was the language of the future, and this C hacker stuff, it would never catch on. One of the reasons we don't program in Lisp anymore is because it is damned hard to read. It is full of parentheses because Lisp... Ooh.
Just like that.
Oh. Lisp is actually just like that. That was recursion. That was deep. Thank you, sound people. That was great. Anyways, yes. So Lisp generally worked with lists of things in parentheses, and you could only basically a list you could access by either getting the first item or the rest of the items in the list, and you just had to kind of tear your way through these things. This is a function in Lisp that prints out the lyrics to 99 bottles of beer on the wall. This would be a lot simpler in JavaScript and Python, or at least a lot easier to read this, and this is actually a more readable version of this function. So that's why we don't use Lisp anymore. The other thing is that a lot of AI oftentimes is AI until it isn't. For the longest time, oh, no, I don't have a chess slide. But anyways, for the longest time, chess was supposed to be an AI problem. And in fact, people believed in the beginning that chess was an inherently human ability, and you couldn't, and you'd never be able to write a chess program that could take on a grandmaster or even a high school student. They're going, it just takes too much reasoning. Then people figured out look-ahead algorithms, and then chess stopped being an AI problem. It became a game programming problem. There's also another algorithm you may have heard of called A*. Basically, it's for finding the path, or finding paths for objects around a maze. Used to be an AI problem, now it's a game programming problem. So certain things fall under the category of AI until they're solved. Then they're not AI anymore. The old definition of AI used to be things we haven't gotten computers to do yet. And in the end, a classical AI, old school AI, before the AI we had today, was basically creating a giant tree representing all the possible solutions for a problem that was called the solution space. And AI programs were largely about searching this entire solution space as quickly as possible to find the node in this giant tree that was a best match for the problem. And here, they were largely rules-based systems. They were largely a bunch of if statements. Here is a very simple scaled-down version of a rule-based system. Basically, if favorite artist equals Taylor Swift and current season equals autumn, likely coffee choice is pumpkin spice. The original chatbot, and this is something I teach people how to write in Tampa at the AI meetup, was Eliza, developed by Joseph Weizenbaum. The OG chatbot was written between 1964 and 1966, and it was actually meant to be a very flexible chatbot system. You could load it with a script, and the most popular script that Eliza had, and now we just think of Eliza as this, is the doctor script. And the doctor script pretended to be a Rogerian psychotherapist. That's the easiest kind of psychotherapist to fake, because in Rogerian psychotherapy, you're basically listening to the patient, and then you say, and how does that make you feel? So the Eliza script, of course, ran on an IBM 7094 that could address 32K of memory and had a 36-bit data bus, and would cost about $34 million in present-day money. If you grew up in the 1980s, you know that you could run Eliza on a 16K TRS-80 computer, and it was a lot of fun to play with. And Eliza was implemented in a version of Lisp that also had an Algol-like language in it to make it easier to program. It took about 20 or 30 pages of large tractor feed paper to print out all the code. And one thing that Joseph Weizenbaum, the inventor of Eliza, said that he thought that it would induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. And this was not a very sophisticated chatbot, but there were people who actually believed that there was another person on the end of the teletype. Let me see if I can't quickly show you. Let's see. Eliza here. I don't know if you can see the text here, but I'm going to try and bump it up. The modern version of Eliza uses something that they didn't have in Madslip or Lisp, and that is regular expressions. So basically, all I'm doing is, and all Eliza did, I'm just duplicating what Eliza does, is I'm looking for key words and phrases, because then I can go, okay, if the person says, I feel this, I have a bunch of responses for I feel this. If the person says, I feel happy, or I feel sad, or, my mother doesn't understand me. So I have all, there are all these pre-programmed responses, and they're just kind of fill in the blank. It's largely regular expressions, but this is the way it used to work. And I'm running a Jupyter notebook, which is basically a way for Python to, for you to use Python to share Python notes and Python code all in one document. There's a tiny little video startup, you may have heard of it, called Netflix, which actually uses Jupyter notebooks for all kinds of data science stuff. So I'm going to just type in really quickly, I feel sad. So this was the ChatGPT of its day. When do you usually feel sad? In the morning after throwing up, let's say. That's when I feel sad. How do you feel when you say that? Quite distressed. Now, quite distressed was one of those responses that there was no regular expression for, and I have a bunch of fallback phrases. And one of them is this: change the topic. So that's exactly what Eliza does in this case. This is mere mimicry of what the original Eliza program does. But unlike the original Eliza program, like I said, it's largely defining a giant dictionary where regular expressions are the key, and I've got an array of, and the matching values are basically arrays of possible responses that get selected at random. But when Weizenbaum's secretary played with Eliza, at some point, she was having a chat with him and asked him to leave the room because she was having a really in-depth and personal conversation with this. So that's why Weizenbaum said, yeah, this is going to induce powerful delusion thinking in quite normal people, and that'll probably happen with regular, with our ChatGPTs later on today. I did the Eliza demo already. The other thing is GitHub Copilot. It is not the first programming assistant. It is not the first thing that claimed to be able to write code for you and you would never have to program again. In the 1980s, there was a piece of software called The Last One, which claimed to do the same thing, and it ran on an Apple II, and they took out ads in all the big magazines. And if you read only one non-programming book on old school AI, I think it's still applicable. You'll also get a good grasp of computer science, because there are a lot of computer science principles taught there, including the halting problem. Make it Gödel, Escher, Bach. It is a fantastic book. The other reason, another reason that AI is, it's not too late to join AI is because AI is moving fast and breaking itself. In fact, when I was invited to speak here at Civo Navigate, it was November 17, 2023 at 2:10 p.m. This is an actual screenshot of the Slack chat I had with Sophia, Civo COO, where she invited me to speak. And I'm going, great, I would love to chat about AI. That's great. There aren't going to be any changes between now and then. This should be good, right? Barely a half hour later, Sam Altman got ousted from OpenAI. And later on, I created a graphic. Did anybody here follow what's going on in the political situation in the UK when they had Prime Minister Liz Truss? And somebody said, who's going to last longer, her or a head of lettuce? I did the same thing with their new interim CEO, Emmett Shear. Which one would last longer? Emmett barely lasted 3 days, I think, or something like that before Sam Altman came in. And the AI scene right now is a bunch of people kind of just pointing at each other and yelling things. And now Sam Altman wants to raise up to $7 trillion to make AI chips. And remember that the entire spending of the US government is $1 trillion less than that. I don't know where the money's going to come from. And of course, we've got this guy making his own AI. And just last week, one of the big brains behind OpenAI, Andrej Karpathy, has left OpenAI to do his own thing, and we don't know what that is yet. That just only happened last week. This is how, and you have to remember, this is only over the past 3 months. And now we have Sora type some stuff, and it'll make a video up to 1 minute in length. Let's see if I can, oh, you know what, I hadn't counted on, let's see how quick the Wi-Fi is. But generally, well, there we go. So this is chair archaeology in Sora. Watch what's happening here. They're doing archaeology on these old lawn chairs, which magically appears. One of them turns into a map. It's a little slow, and then the chair is just kind of floating away on its own. So, you know, we're going to have to work out some of this stuff. This is still pattern recognition getting a lot of things wrong. And it's disturbing as all heck. The other problem, of course, let's see if I can do this, is that sure, you can come up with an interesting Gen AI company, but OpenAI might actually just yank out the rug from under you. And that is one of the interesting challenges. So let's see. Let me get to the next slide. There we go. Finally, AI, well, actually, third out of four, AI requires more than just bootcamp skills. And you have to remember that some hot things that come about are actually driven by programming languages that came from the dead. Objective-C should have been dead until the iPhone resurrected it. And actually, Python was going to be overtaken by Ruby if not for AI and all the data science libraries. Part of the reason, of course, is that Python is runnable pseudocode. It is fantastic for that sort of thing. It has a pile of libraries. And, of course, there are computational notebooks. Does anybody here know what a Jupyter notebook is? All right, good. A bunch of you do know. For those of you who don't know, Jupyter Notebooks are a way of creating documents that mix text and code together. Let me see if I can't show you something really quickly. This is a program. I'm not sure I'll have time to run it, but it basically walks you through the process of building an application called Sweater or No, which gets your location, gets the current weather at that location, gets the time and time zone at that location, and then writes a haiku about the weather at that location, tells you whether you should wear a sweater or not, and then draws a picture of that happening. And the end result ends up something like this. We're running short of time, but if anybody wants to see the code, I will put the URL in the slides as well, so you could play around with it and run it in your own Jupyter Notebook on your own machine and play around with it and do all kinds of experimentation. All right, if you want to get into Python, I recommend these two books. They are fantastic. They are the books I use in the Python course I teach. They're by No Starch Press. I also recommend watching this video. Let's build GPT from scratch, almost no libraries. This is Andrej Karpathy. He just left OpenAI, but he's forgotten more about GPTs than I will ever learn. So, and this is a fantastic video. You will have to make peace with the fact that there is math. There is algebra. In fact, there is linear algebra. Yeah, it's no, for a lot of people, it's no fun. I kind of enjoy it. But the thing is that linear algebra, you need to simulate biological neurons. This is a biological neuron. This is the basic building block of a neural net. And a neural net, basically what we're doing with neural networks is we are simulating technological neurons where basically a neuron takes inputs, weighs those values, and then based on those values basically kind of runs a formula that determines whether the output is going to be, the output will basically be a 1 or a 0. And then based on that, you can do all kinds of things like a single neuron can separate two different things into two different categories as long as they are distinctly divided. So here we've got this graph where we're trying to determine what's a caterpillar, what's a ladybird, and we know that caterpillars are longer than they are wide and ladybirds are wider than they are long. And if you graph their widths and lengths on this graph, a single neuron can actually kind of determine what is what and kind of classify these things. This is how basic AI works. There was that single neuron is often called a perceptron. There were two computer scientists who in the 50s wrote a book about it, but they said they're kind of limited. But they didn't think of actually putting perceptrons together in a neural network, which can do more than just kind of separate and classify things just into two things and can work with fuzzier and fuzzier categories. You will need to know a little bit of calculus, but I promise it's the easy calculus. Differential calculus as opposed to integral calculus. You need that as part of a way to train neural nets. This is the, if you have ever used a speedometer, you are looking at the results of differential calculus because speed is basically just the derivative of distance. And like I said earlier, we use neural networks by training them, and we need the calculus to actually do the training part because we provided an example, and then we say you were off by this much with a training set of data. You will also need to learn probability and statistics. It is the fun math, so that's okay. I'll give you 10 seconds to see if you can figure this one out. You probably, deep down inside, you probably know it. Because your brain is doing a lot of pattern recognition, and if you were around in the 80s, you would know this is never going to give you up. The information theory is also an important part of AI. It is a brand new, it's a relatively new branch of math created by Claude Shannon in the 30s. Something to look at. And if you want to get into math gear, I recommend these books. Math for Deep Learning, Essential Math for AI. Actually, a fun one is Make Your Own Neural Network because you learn the math and then you apply the math in Python. And one of the things that you may need to do as an aspiring AI scientist is deal with the explainability performance trade-off, which is basically as AIs get more sophisticated and better, it is harder and harder to explain how it came up with its decisions or its answers. And that's going to be one of the big challenges for the next little while. Although the next little while in AI might be the next 6 weeks. It's a little hard to tell. Things move really quickly. And once again, yes, you should read. If you read only one known programming book, get the audiobook version of this. It is hilarious. It is called You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. The title comes from pickup lines generated by an AI after being trained on Tinder messages, and it is hilarious. Also worth reading are these books. I rather like Is the Algorithm Plotting Against Us? That's a fun one. Also good in audiobook form. And if you want to be put on a watch list, read these two books. One is Man-Made Women, The Sexual Politics of Sex Dolls and Sex Robots. And yes, there is enough academic material and papers that that Palgrave Macmillan was actually able to put it in a book. I have read it. I'm different now. The other one is the Palgrave Handbook of Malicious Use of AI and Psychological Security. I have not read it yet. It's going to be an interesting read. I'm going to have a large bourbon with me, though, when I drink it. So I'm going to need a stiff drink. And then I recommend keeping an eye on the Mojo programming language. It's by a company called Modular. It's run by Chris Latner, creator of the LLVM compiler and the Swift programming language. It is a superset of Python. You can program it in plain old Python, but if you use the extended keywords, it becomes really fast because it knows how to take advantage of the hardware. Think of it as supercharged TypeScript for Python. And then finally, and this is the most important one, actually, in my opinion, is that AI really needs more good people. I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but in SciPy, there used to be a Boston housing prices data set, and it was a Harvard paper about how air quality affects housing prices because air quality in the 70s was bad. This was before the EPA, and it was in scikit-learn. Except what happened was they included criminal statistics and percentages of black people in a neighborhood. And remember, this had to throw Ice Cube in there. But anyways, this was about air quality and house prices. And in the end, they came up with this parabola that basically said, you know what? At a certain point, you have enough black people and people of color that they lower housing prices. It's basically a racist data set. It has been removed from scikit-learn. The other problem is we have a lot of, I won't miss words, we have a lot of dicks in AI. One guy is actually the AI pioneer, Marvin Minsky, who talked about the perceptron. He was on Epstein Island and has been on the Epstein plane. Harvard biology George Church at least apologized for that. So he took Epstein money for his research. He at least apologized, but he did say, look, there's a lot of nerd tunnel vision, and it's something you need to remember. Mark Andreessen, best known for creating the browser, now kind of a grumpy tech bro who is generally against AI safety or ethics or things like that. He just wants to go full speed ahead. And in fact, he recently wrote the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, which you may have heard of. You may have seen it on TechCrunch or whatnot. The thing is, and he really sounds like Dr. Doom in this essay. The thing is, he copied it, and he pays tribute to the Futurist Manifesto. And the Futurists were this Italian movement in the 1910s who later on decided that they wanted to get friendly with their buddy, Benito Mussolini, who then started the fascist movement, who then got chummy with this German artist named Adolf Hitler, and then we had to make Captain America and all that. And then we got Thanos. So, anyways, this is an actual quote from the Futurist Manifesto. They loved war. We wish to glorify war, the world's only hygiene, militarism, patriotism, the destructive act of the libertarian, beautiful ideas worth dying for, and scorn for women. This is terrible. You do not want these people driving the bus on AI. Sam Bankman-Fried, ethical altruism. A lot of people in AI are into it. It's kind of an empty philosophy. Person you should follow is Timnit Gebru. So anyways, she is, I consider her a superhero in the Algorithmic Justice League. And she came up with this acronym to describe a lot of AI tech bros. TESCREAL, these are people who are into transhumanism, extropianism, singularitarianism. Well, basically it is, you know, we need to take over the universe. And we need to do it any way we can, and we need to do it now before computers beat us all. She calls it TESCREAL. The problem is TESCREAL is a bit sounds too cool. It sounds like a movement I would like to join. TESCREAL, that sounds cool. I prefer calling it rectal set because these people have their heads up their asses. I've just rearranged the letters a bit. And these are the same kinds of people who created, this is Sealand, so, you know, I want to create my own country and have my own crazy libertarian rules. And it's now happening. There are all these techno-billionaires who are buying Hawaii, buying chunks of Hawaii, like large chunks of it. And if you want to learn more about this sort of thing and why we need you in AI, just to at least counter these people, check out Douglas Rushkoff's book, Survival of the Richest. It is fantastic in audiobook form. And yes, more than ever, we need people in AI who give a damn about ethics. And as I said, my friend James Gress, here tomorrow at 1:30, delivering generative AI solutions in the enterprise. So yes, real applications, real people paying real money. Go check it out. I'm going to be here. And thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? This is the speed run of the presentation because it's 100 slides or something like that. But like I said, I've shared the URL, and there are notes in the slides as well so that I kind of elaborate on what I mean by each slide. So by all means, go check it out. Anybody have any questions? None? Yes? What do... What? Okay, he asked what personally draws me to the space. What do I find interesting about it? Actually, it's part of my philosophy to always bet on the technology that is initially dismissed as a toy. So that was personal computers. At one point, remember, the PC was made by IBM's entry-level systems division, which meant this is a computer that will tide you over until you're ready for a real computer. The same thing happened with the web and mobile phones. I just kind of like that sort of thing. The other thing is actually I want to counter some of the. I want to be a force for good in against some of the tech bros. I need the karma. Anybody else? Yes. Okay, so the paradox of where humans are good as subject, but the AI does poorly. And it's probably largely because of, and a lot of it is training data. So for instance, if there is a topic that has been very well worn and it is on the internet everywhere and there are lots of Redditors writing about it, AI will probably do really well at synthesizing answers. Whereas if it's a very esoteric topic, AI will kind of generalize and be vague about it. Basically, in the end, I think for the moment, it's a combination. The solution to that is, one, providing more training for that AI, or deciding that we are going to make specialized AIs for specialized purposes. And the other thing, I think, is respect the human. We are still very, very good at this sort of thing. Let's not completely go Minotaur. Let's try and stay Centaur as long as we can. Any other questions? Yes?
So if being in the Centaur, you know, if the humans are guiding it, but there's no longer any entry-level jobs, how are humans going to become the head if the entry-level jobs are taken by AI?
Okay, the question was, yes. If Centaur means being the head, having the human as the head, and there are no more entry-level jobs, what happens? Because, of course, typically AI tends to do some of the entry-level stuff. And that's going to require, I think that's going to require a rethinking. We are going to need to come up with new, I'm trying to think of a good word, like a new industrial philosophy, just as once upon a time we had scientific Taylorism, where Taylor said, you know what, you can't trust people, make them work like machines. And then Deming came along with a nicer way to manufacture things and go, let people think, let them take responsibility, they will be more satisfied with that work. We need a new philosophy to help people operate and to help support entry-level people. For instance, Boeing recently, just last year, was looking for entry-level programmers, but they wanted 8 years of experience. Which is crazy, because if the number of programmers, and I believe it still is, doubling every 5 years, that means that half of all programmers, by the laws of logarithm, have less than 5 years experience. So yes, we do need a new industrial philosophy. Okay, I think am I out of time? One more question. Yes?
So when the iPhone came out, or new mobile platform, right, the advice for developers wasn't, hey, go learn mobile chipsets, or go, you know, it was like, hey, if you want to get into the mobile bandwagon, go learn mobile application development.
Yes.
So how do you feel? Like, a lot of the advice here is to go learn, you know, the hard math and the machine learning and, like, you know, the actual model.
Okay.
What about that? There's a big opportunity in finding, like, applications, you leveraging the you know, ChatGPT or the other, like, commoditized models from, like, Facebook or Meta, and actually finding real-world applications of
Real world, okay, yeah. So you're talking about not getting down to the chip level, just as we didn't have to do in the world of mobile, and that is absolute, and that's quite true. And there's one thing I actually had to cut out because of time limitations, sweater or no. And if anybody wants to see it, I'd be happy to demo it wherever, anytime during the conference, where I do leverage a whole bunch of APIs, feed that information into ChatGPT as kind of a baby version of basically generating completions based on using other APIs to provide ChatGPT with even more info. So yes, that is a way to do it. Part of the problem is, in the end, if you OpenAI keeps pulling the rug out of everybody and going, oh, you know, people have been building applications on OpenAI, and then OpenAI has gone, oh, well, we wrote that too. So that is another thing. Right now, people are getting Sherlocked by OpenAI. Sherlock was an old Apple utility that was fantastic, and then Apple built it into their OS, and the Sherlock company went out of business. That's being called Sherlock. Right now, it's so early in the game that OpenAI is still Sherlocking people. So I figure, you know, a lot of it is, yes, learn OpenAI or other LLM APIs, but it is so early in the game that it doesn't hurt to learn some of the nitty-gritty. It might be just because this is a weird, fast-changing field that we've never seen the likes of before. and it has big impact. So it's one of those, it's one of those wait and see things. I'm pretty sure this talk will be invalidated 6 months from now. It's that kind of field. Well, I have to let you go. I'll be around here to answer more questions one-on-one. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.